Bleeding Cool's coverage of DragonCon is brought to you by CosmicRadio.tv. It's like OC Remix, except for podcasts. Powered by Wonderflonium. Coming September 2012 at CosmicRadio.tv.
I was wondering if you were going to write another Superman story, what would you want to do?
Well, I actually wrote 2 episodes while I was there. One of them was Season's Greetings, another was called Virtually Destroyed. It was fun. When you're on a show and you're doing a series like that, I've often said, we work 18 hours a day minimum. I'd leave my house, I'd be home 18 hours later. Sometimes there was one day where we shot 22 hours. I say poor preparation, but other people say go to work. When you're there, you have that downtime in between scenes, in between things. I never wanted to have real idle time. You didn't have enough time to go to the gym or do something completely, so I would sit there and I would write stories. I loved doing that. It was my same time I got cast to play Clark in Lois and Clark. I had a writing deal at Hollywood Pictures, and I couldn't do both because the time commitment was too much for the acting. If I were, honestly, look at this. If I were to sit down and write another Superman story, I've seen the stories replayed on Spider-Man, on Batman, a lot of the things that we played in Lois and Clark. We had 86 hours or something of that nature to explore the relationship between the two. And I've seen the same thing, I've seen the Spider-Man movies go through a lot of the same beats that we did, and even Superman Returns, things like that. By the way, Superman Returns, how can Superman let another man raise his kid? I'm sorry. That's a hard one to do, that one really bothered me. But I digress. So I don't know where I would take it. I would sit down with the DC guys and I would sit down and talk about it, and I'd listen to what some people had to say, but ultimately I would take all that in and then I would flush it, because a story has to stand on its own. I don't know how dark Superman can get. He is the most moral of all characters. You have the most powerful man in the world raised on small town American values, and it's a pretty strong story, and I'd like him to be able to keep those values. It looked like Captain America did a good job in Avengers, and I'd like to see it handled somewhat in the same way. And if I had a real good story for the next film, I would copyright it to the nth degree before I ever showed it to anybody. That is for sure. But at this point in time, I don't have anything. George Reeves, I think, did a great job. I really enjoyed his Clark Kent. His Superman, what could you do back in the 50s? It was a little different. He was laying on a box and he jumped off of the little trampolines, I suppose. Christopher Reeve was my Superman. He was the Superman I had growing up, and he is the Superman that I modeled my character after when I played Superman. Clark Kent was much more the George Reeve style, so I sort of stole a little bit from each of them, footnoting where applicable, because I wouldn't want to take their thunder, but those guys did great jobs. And when we had started with Lois and Clark, Deborah Joy Levine, she came up with a different take, and it was her take that spoke to me, and it was very clear to me that I felt very comfortable with what she had created on the page, and she continued that, and the show continued in that vein. I was very well aware that I was stepping into the shoes of, possibly the greatest American icon ever. Saying that and understanding what that means are two different things. So when I first started, I said, oh yeah, sure, of course. I'm going to play this role, and it's great. And someone said, your life will never be the same after this. And I said, I don't know what that means, really. And, probably for the first year, it was a really tough transition because you do so many photo shoots and so many things, and so brand new to you. I would be asleep in my bed thinking that, I was having pictures taken of me. I mean, where's the psychologist on that one? It just felt like it's hard to have that lack of privacy and the loss of anonymity. I can't imagine how I would have handled that had I been even younger. So it's tough for some of these kids who get a degree of fame. Then as you get older, you realize it's all, make-believe anyway. And it's very fleeting, and you watch the next guys come in and do that, so it puts it all in perspective. But I didn't feel daunted by the task because of the way that Deborah Joy had created the character. I felt really comfortable. In fact, we'd gone through the audition process, and I was working on it, and I was doing well. And one night they wrote a new scene and had us come back the next day to do that scene. When they wrote that scene, I knew the job was mine. And the scene they wrote was where Lois had come to Clark's apartment and was a little intoxicated and wanted to get it on. And Clark, being the most moral guy in the world, wouldn't do such a thing. And so that was the scene, and I knew how to play that. I don't know how, but I felt very comfortable, and that's when I knew that I was going to, in my head, get the role, or I felt like I was the guy to get it. The Superman curse. There is no Superman curse. I mean, that's completely fabricated. Kurt Allen lived to very ripe old age and did fantastically. And if I can live as long as him, I'll be lucky. George Reeves, that was his situation was pretty tough. There was a lot that was going on then, and he may have had his own demons. And I don't really know if there is a final decision on what happened to him. I never saw the Affleck movie, but I'd like to, that portrayed that, but I really don't know the situation there. Christopher Reeve, as tragic as things were, it could very well be argued that he was extremely triumphant, and what he did and what he overcame was amazing. And certainly in my life, I feel pretty non-cursed at this point in time. Brandon Routh, great friend of mine, great guy, seems to be doing just fine, and now we got Henry Cavill. So the reality is most of us haven't had any real problems, so I think that Superman curse is a myth. Well, I never wear the Superman suit around to impress my son, but there's been a lady or two, no, I'm kidding. The truth of the matter is, we were picked up for a 5th season, so at the end of the 4th season, we were getting ready to come back for a 5th. And then Terry she got pregnant, and it was going to be very unhealthy for her and her unborn child to work. Warner Brothers played around with the idea for a little bit, and then said, you know what, we're done. And that was the end. If I had known that we weren't coming back, I would have pilfered so many of those suits and so many things. I would have started, getting my bags full of stuff and then leaving the set. So unfortunately, I didn't take a suit home. Walking around in this suit on Halloween would be kind of a scary thing. They'd be like, doesn't that guy know he's not the character anymore? So I can let it go with grace.
I just want to know what you admire the most about the character Superman. Obviously, we have our own things that we love about Superman, what he means to the world, what he represents. What does he mean to you? What do you hope he will leave for generations to come? I mean, he's modern myth and legend for the world.
Well, I think we touched on this earlier a little bit, and I think the thing about Superman is, here he is, this, we're America, we're a nation of immigrants. He's an immigrant, if you will. I met someone from the INS yesterday, and they asked me to sign a picture, and I wrote, "Don't deport me." It was a Superman photo. We are a nation built on immigrants, and it makes us so diverse and so strong. And here you get a guy coming in from another planet who is raised in small-town America on small-town values, and what he says, truth, justice, and the American way. I think that's what he represents. I think that's about as wholesome as it gets, and that to me is the essence of Superman and the essence of America, and I think it's the greatest thing that we have. That's a very good point, which is a very rarely brought up point. I'm a quarter Japanese. I was actually born Tanaka, was my given name. And the funny thing was, when I was first cast, it was amazing because the internet was in its infancy. That's how old I am. And we were starting to hear comments and things of that nature. And there was some literary genius out there who wrote, Dean Cain is Superman. We wanted Superman, not Sushi Man. My brother laughed so hard at that. He thought that was the funniest thing in history, and I thought it was hysterical because I was raised here in America. I never saw myself looking like an outsider. In fact, one day, one of my friends, when I was a young kid, 10 years old maybe, had asked, he said, "Hey, Frank's sister wondered if the Chinese kids had moved out. And I was like, well, what Chinese kids? And he's like, you. I was like, I'm not Chinese, I'm Japanese. He's like, dude, there's no difference. There is. But it wasn't even in my consciousness that I looked Asian. I'd never even thought about that. It was interesting. I've always been sort of perceived as an all-American type person. I played football. I was a captain of the football team. I did very well in school. I never thought of myself as anything other than completely American, which is, I think, is a great connection to Superman. Here is a Kryptonian who is nothing but an American fighting for, again, truth, justice, and the American way. The fact that could be in any way controversial is shocking to me, because I think the American way, is, as I look at the rest of the world, is the best way and represents the greatest beacon of light out there. As far as playing iconic characters, you don't think about it in the moment. You're doing your best, and people are around you, and there are a lot of cooks in the kitchen, so to speak. But at the end of the day, you do the best you can. And I didn't know if I was going to be well received or not well received. And there's always people who aren't going to like you. And as an actor, you need to have a thick skin. If you take it too personally, it will destroy you, and it's destroyed a lot of people in the past. I'm an athlete first, and so I sort of approach my work as an athlete and say, okay, I'm going to do the best job I can, and if people like it, great, and I appreciate that. But if they don't like it, I will have to say sorry. That I've done the best I can, and it's something my father told me early on. He said, if you read your reviews and you start believing them, you're going to get lost. And if you read the good reviews, you need to read the bad reviews too, and you can give them both. It's going to destroy you. So as I always did with my father's advice, I took part of it and put the other part away. So as it works now, if I get a review and it's a good review, I'll read that. Bad review? Nah.